Crusaders. I am Brooke Plack, your host here today on the Grit Crusade podcast. And today it is just me and you. So for those of you that have been here before, welcome back. I'm glad you come back to spend some time with us talking about life, relationships, and business. And for those of you that it's your first time, welcome. Nice to meet you. This is where we get real in the trenches, hence grit. I'm a sucker for a good acronym. I was a middle school teacher. Can you tell? So today what we're going to talk about is how do you juggle it all? One of the questions I get as an entrepreneur is, how do you do all of this? First of all, I love it. I love the chaos and the change and the planning and the strategizing. I absolutely love it, and it fuels my soul. So let me start by giving you guys just kind of a little overview of what it is that my job, career, and life entails. So I have 3 operating businesses. So 3 operating companies. I have a youth recreational facility. I have a childcare and early learning academy, and then a co-working and event space. So Empire Kids, Connect Academy for Children, and the Space co-working venue. So, and then I have a real estate company. I'm a podcaster, which you're listening to right now, and future content creator, or I guess if I'm a podcaster, then that makes me a current content creator. I don't know. Still kind of working through that. I'm working on 6 new program developments in our existing operating companies. So those are new programs we're adding in our new facility that's being constructed right now, as well as expansions into things that we're already doing. I'm working on a plan for consulting and coaching to launch that brand in the next year. I'm a mother of a 5.5-year-old, a wife, a friend. And so all of that seems like it is a ton of stuff going on, and it is. And I love it. I have a passion for making a difference in the world. So I heard something a couple weeks back. I always say I want to leave my dent on the world, but I have furthered that statement by saying I want to leave an unerasable dent or impact on the world. So at the end of the day, whenever my tombstone's created and my fancy leopard coffin is put out for my, funeral, I want people to say that I made a difference. It doesn't matter if I die with a ton of money. It doesn't matter if I have material things, but I want to have left the world better than I came into it. And so I preface what I'm about to talk about with that is knowing what is your impact on the world? Why are you here, and why do you want to do what you want to do? Once you've learned that, all those other pieces kind of start falling into place. But I do have some strategies and some tips of how I make this craziness and what may look like to other people chaos into a fluid flow that most of the time seems to, work and allow us to also find time to travel, which is something that's really important to my husband and I and our son. We're taking him to Europe this summer for the first time. And so there is a way that you can do it all, whatever that all means to you. So that has a different meaning for everyone. So before we dive in to how I have learned to juggle and do it all, we're going to do my favorite segment in the podcast, which is called Trivia in the Trenches. So when it's solo episodes that are just me and you, then I get to ask a question, and then I wait and see if you can figure out the answer. And then I just pretend like no one knew it, because it always makes me happy to be able to stump people with trivia. So here is our question for today, our Trivia in the Trenches. How many elevators does the Empire State Building have? Dun, 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 dun. 73. Right? Can you believe that? That's like unthinkable. I chose the Empire State Building question because, like I said, we love to travel. But this is what's even more interesting about this. To make it to the 102nd floor observatory, you would have to climb 1,872 steps, which is the same as this, vertical distance as those 73 elevators. And didn't know this, another fun fact, every year they host the Empire State Building annual run-up. Does that not sound like death, like pure misery? One of the world's famous tower races where competitors make the climb on foot and they race to the top of the Empire State Building. It's like, okay, ready, set, go. And now you're going to have misery in your hips and thighs and glutes and butt the whole way up. So, 73 elevators. Now you're smarter than you were when you started the podcast. All right. So how do I juggle it all? First of all, I spend a lot of time strategizing and planning. So some people call it time management. Some people call it being able to, figure out what the most important thing is that you're working on. What are your top three? But for me, one of the biggest mistakes I made early on, and one of the biggest mistakes I see leaders that I'm coaching and working with right now on, is Monday morning comes and they sit down at their computer and they log into their email or their messages or their Microsoft Teams or whatever, Slack, whatever tool it is you're using, and they start their day. And wherever that day pulls and tugs them, they go. And wrong approach, because everyone else's emergency is always an emergency to them, but that doesn't mean it needs to be an emergency to you. And so you have to start your week or your day with a plan for what it is you're going to do. And so I'll tell you what that looks like in my life. So in my life, I have an amazing executive assistant. If you haven't listened to that episode, we will link it in the notes with Dia Bates, and you need to go back and listen to it about our relationship and how we do things and her incredible story. But we sit down on Mondays at 10 o'clock. So it's allowed us to get both of our boys off to school. We've been able to get ourselves kind of together. And then we sit down together and we strategize for the next 2 weeks every week. We're always looking 2 weeks out, a quarter out, and then a year out for any travel plans. And so we sit down and take a full hour. Sometimes it goes like an hour and 15 minutes, but a full hour. And if this was just me and myself, I would take at least a full 30 minutes, and we write down every single thing. I use a paper planner, and then I have a digital calendar. So I use the Full Focus Planner. It's from Michael Hyatt and Company, which is now rebranded as Full Focus and Company. And we'll link that down below for you as well. But it is critical that you have a system of how you're keeping up with everything. So for me, I'm writing everything down. It's got like an hourly time thing for each day. And then we're looking for any scheduling conflicts, any open scheduling time. So if someone needs to call a meeting with me, one of our team members or a community member, because I'm involved in several community groups and boards that I sit on, we have designated times in that schedule that Dia will add people to my calendar. And if I don't have any time, I don't have any time. Like I just don't. And you have to learn how to manage your time like you would manage money. Okay. So if you have a budget, for example, let's say $200 a month is your like blow money, your spending money. The end of that $200, do you just keep spending into your grocery or rent money? If you do, that's negligent. That's not a good idea. Same thing with your calendar. If you have this much time allotted in your schedule for meetings and you need more meetings than that, unless it's a true emergency or a true timely manner, because most of the time those emergencies that come up were lack of planning ahead of time. Okay. It's not an emergency because you didn't work on it till the last minute or somebody else didn't work on it till the last minute. A real emergency is like, in our childcare business, DHS has come in and we have something that we're not compliant in and we need to schedule an emergency training, right? So if you're in a regulated industry like our childcare industry is, there are times when true emergencies come up, okay? There is a death in a staff member's family, someone's fallen really ill, something like that. Those things happen. But without a plan in place, a true strategy on the front end, your calendar will become like your bank account. If you don't tell it where to go, somebody else will. If you don't take control of your calendar, someone else will. I have 12 months of blank calendar sheets printed out that stay with me, sometimes 18 months in my paper calendar. And I use a digital one because I'm always looking ahead on travel, on competitions that we're going to. Where am I going to be? I don't want to overextend myself, because when you overextend yourself, you become crabby, cranky, and you get sick. That is just, there's no way around it. And so figuring out what kind of calendar strategy works for you and saying like, well, I've tried that and I've tried this. Gina, this is your life. You got to try again. You got to find something else that does work. If it is a digital calendar and you don't ever need to write it down, bless you. But my ADHD brain, I've got to look at it again, and look at it one more time. And that way I know when someone's like, hey, let's schedule lunch. Sometimes I have to say, okay, I'm 2 weeks out. Let's put it down for then. And people that love you, they know and respect the fact that you're learning to build those boundaries in your life. But I cannot stress to you the importance of having control of your calendar. If you are always running around trying to put out fires and, oh my God, my son's got a game tonight. Your son's had a game tonight since they put that calendar out a month ago. You knew yesterday that he had a game and you haven't washed his uniform. Like, and I'm not saying I don't ever get there because God knows I'm not a robot, but most of the time I have things planned ahead and it's never going to be foolproof. But I'll tell you, when things get crazy and chaotic and life happens and you have trauma and tragedy, be able to gradually get back to that plan is your sanity. That is what saves you. But if you have no plan at all, then you're going to continue to be in the same place of life that you are in right now. But you can change it. It's just up to you. There's nobody else that can do it for you. It is totally up to you. And what this looks like for me is going to look different for you. And that's okay. You may not have 12 months of paper calendars printed out and a full focus planner and also have a digital calendar. But that's what works for me. That's how I keep up with it all. So the number one tool I can tell you is to make time on either Friday afternoon. Some people like to do it at the end of the week or maybe your last work day is Thursday. Your last working day of the week before the weekend, or you take some time off, and then, or Monday morning, if that works for you, and take 30 minutes, take an hour. You may not have as many things on your list as I do. My son's playing t-ball. He's in dance. He takes ninja, and swim starts next week. So I'm also juggling and looking at those things, and I take him to all of those things 90% of the time. And so what does that look like for you? Figure that out. And when it's not working, do something different. It doesn't have to be the same all the time. But I was a planner geek. I tried every single planner on the planet. I wanted this cute planner and these cute stickers and all this. And girl, that did not work for me. But when I finally found something that stuck, which for me was the full focus planner, I've stuck with it. It's a quarterly planner. I have used it. I probably have 30 around my house now because you get a new one every 3 months because you really don't need to be carrying around 12 months worth of stuff. 3 months is enough. Copy any notes over and go. And they have an amazing training. They teach you how to use it. And over time, you become a master at setting those quarterly goals, working towards those quarterly goals, and truly being able to make a difference in your life. So make sure you have that strategy. Make sure you have that plan, because if you don't, you are letting someone else, your husband, your kids, your job, your elderly parents, whatever it is dictating your schedule, and you're never finding that center and that momentum that you're looking for. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is delegating until it hurts. So this may look different if you are not self-employed or if you're not in a leadership role. It may be delegating to your kids or to your husband. But when I say delegating until it hurts means, I have a saying that I tell my team members is, I am fully prepared for you to experience the joys of your success and the pain of your failures. Okay. We learn more from the times we fail than we succeed. And so you are not your spouse's, okay, your husband or your wife or your partner. You're not their mother. You don't have to give them 99 reminders and then bitch whenever they don't do it. You can delegate something to someone else in your household, and then they can experience the joys and pains themselves. Because guess what? They will learn from them. And does it cost me money sometimes when I delegate to someone and then I know that they may not be making the right decision, or they haven't gotten it done soon enough, or they're planning and they didn't strategize enough ahead of time? Yeah, it does. But for me, what's important to me is that I'm growing those people around me as I'm growing myself. And so what is it that you really want? Like, I feel like raising children, that our number one goal in parents is to make them a follower of Christ. And number two is to give them the tools to be successful. The worst thing a parent can do is not give their kids the tools to be successful. Okay. And that looks different for every kid because every kid is different. And I take my, role as being a leader of adults just the same as I am as parenting my son. Is my role is to give them the tools to be successful. But once they have the tools, it's up to them to do it. So I have to delegate until it hurts. Sometimes I can do things faster and better. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I just do it. I'm just do it and I don't delegate, and I could. But other times I have to give that away because you can't do it all. You can do it all, but you can't do every single teeny tiny piece of it. And so if you are someone in a leadership position and you have an assistant or an assistant leader or assistant manager or director with you, or maybe you are the assistant manager, once you delegate and give something away, give people the room and the opportunity to succeed or fail. And if they keep failing forever, well, now it's a performance issue and we need to talk about that, or a disciplinary issue if it's your children. But they have to have an opportunity to try because someone gave you an opportunity to try at some point. And you may have succeeded and you may have failed, but you don't have time to micromanage every single detail in your life. That is called anxiety. It causes stress and unnecessary worry. And you got to be able to let that go. And if you can't, that's when you turn around and go, how is this working for me? How is this really working for me? Because if you're a disaster, your life is going to be a disaster. You can only fake it for so long, Karen. Okay. So what is it that you need to work on in you and turn and look in the mirror in you so that you can quit trying to control everyone and everybody else? Because you are not in control. There is no joy in control, and that is okay. Being an observer of the life around you and the successes that you get to celebrate with people as they grow, that's joy. But trying to make sure everything is perfect all the time, that's not attainable and it's not real. And that's okay that you don't have it all together. But you can still set yourself up for success by having a good strategy and learning to delegate and give away those things to other people. If your child's responsibility is dishes, don't do the dishes. That's their responsibility. And when they want to go do something with their friends or go play outside, no, they have to do the dishes first. And if you aren't holding them accountable for that, well, the fortune's in the follow-up. Something my dad always taught me. You have to follow up with the things that you've put out there in the world, whether it's a sales call or asking your child to do something. If they have to clean their playroom for bed, they clean their playroom before bed. That's it. That's their responsibility. Don't do it for them because we're not giving them the tools they need and we're not helping them grow into who they really could be without that accountability, because that's how we got where we are. Either someone held us accountable or not. Maybe you were just, internally, intrinsically super self-motivated. There's not a lot of people out there that are like that, but maybe you were. And so having that strategy, delegating, and lastly, finding time to shut it off. And I know that kind of sounds counterproductive of saying like, well, how do you juggle it all? Shut it off. Your brain is an organ. It is like a liver. Okay. It has to have time to rest. Your mind lives inside your brain. So if you take your brain, and this is Brooke talking. I'm not a scientist. This is things that I have learned in my spiritual journey and in life. But if you take a brain out of a human body at an autopsy and you sit it on a tray, it has no decision-making power. There is a mind, I don't know if you call it metaphysical or spiritual. I don't know what you would call that. But your mind that's in your brain is what's powering it all the time. And it has to rest. You have to have rest time. And that rest time may look different for you than it does from me. Everyone's rest time is different. It may be, for some people, it may be exercising. For other people, it may be sitting and reading. But what I can tell you it's not is constantly being plugged into electronics, whether it's gaming, whether it's TikTok scrolling mindlessly for 3 hours. You may feel like that you're unplugging, but you are not. You are having constant stimulation, and every time you see something, your brain is firing. And so figuring out what real rest looks like and real unplugging, maybe it's going camping. Is it going to the beach? Is it going into the deer woods where there's no cell service and you can't connect? I'm not saying don't ever look at your phone. I mean, I have my phone with me all the time. Let's be real. But what does rest look like for you? Because I've heard this over and over my whole life. And I used to go, yeah, to people, but you can't pour from an empty cup. Like you literally can't. Like take a second and think about that. If you are not well, if you do not have your schedule, your life under control, and don't give me well, I'm not good at scheduling. Seriously, anyone can be good at scheduling. Okay. But if you don't have all of that together, it's just going to be chaos in your brain all the time. So learning how to let your brain and your body and your mind rest, whatever that looks like for you. My husband loves to paint. If I sit in front of a canvas and start painting, I just feel like I'm smearing kindergarten Crayola everywhere and it looks a disaster. That is not fun for me. I'm not good at that. Rest is not doing something I suck at. Okay. So if you're not athletic, you probably aren't going to play, tennis to rest. Okay. But for some people, that might be rest for them. What is that for you? And is it working for you? Is it reading a book? Is it writing? Is it, mentoring others? What is that rest for you? Because you have to find downtime. And so the key in my life, and for me, what that looks like is I'll get into a really good book series, and I like to listen to audiobooks while I garden. There is nothing on the planet that like detoxes me and gets my brain out of here more than when I put my audiobook on speakerphone or on my little Bose headphones, which are the best headphones on the planet, by the way. Okay. They are so much better than AirPods and those hard plastic things that feel like they're digging their own little graves and tunnels in my ear. But when I put my Bose headphones on and put an audiobook on fiction. Okay. I've learned that I like to listen to fiction and I like to physically like read, like paper read, nonfiction. So that's just something my brain's learned. But if I'm out there gardening, and there's so many benefits to like being in the dirt and the things that it does for like the vibrations in your body and stuff, which is another woo woo topic that I'll probably need to podcast about one day. But that works for me. Camping, being out camping with my family, hiking with my husband. We are overnight backpackers and we usually only get a couple trips in every year, but we'll spend a night or two in the woods and we just talk. We hike like 10, 12 miles a day and we just talk and walk. And that's all we do. And half the time we don't have cell service and it's great. That might not be the thing for you. You might not be an outdoorsy nature person. That's okay. But what is it that you do that gives you true downtime? And if you don't know, like I found myself probably like 6 or 7 years into our company. So we're going on our 10th year right now. And I had no hobbies. I couldn't have answered that question for you. And that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person, but start trying things. Start trying a hobby. And you're like, well, I don't know how to play disc golf. Well, get some Frisbees and watch a YouTube video, right? My husband loves disc golf. I don't like disc golf. I have a bad shoulder. I've had shoulder surgeries and all this. And so that's not fun for me because it actually like physically hurts. But what is it for you that creates that downtime? And be able to answer that. And for me, those are the 3 things that really allow me to do all of those things I talked about at the beginning of this episode is the things I do, I love. And so I'm constantly asking myself that question. Is this working for me? Do I still love this? Is this what I want to do? And I found myself about 3 years ago, and the answer was no. No, this isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to quit working 12 to 14-hour days. I didn't just walk into work one day and go, never mind, I'm not working nights anymore. What doesn't work like that? But small conscious decisions over time to change my schedule is what made it happen. So constantly reflecting on, is this working for you? How do you feel about your schedule, your calendar, your delegation? And then what can I do to turn it all off and give myself some true rest time? Those are the things that make a big difference in being able to juggle all the things in your life. And what works for me may not be what works for you, and it may look totally different, but I would love to hear from you what it is that you are doing. What are the things that you are doing? So drop it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or shoot me an email at chat@brookeplack.com, because I love hearing stories from our viewers and our listeners about the things, how they can relate to what the podcast topics that I'm sharing with you guys about. And if you're still listening and you're at this point in the video or the audio, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you are following and downloading our podcast, because in this whole world of content creation and learning how these algorithms work, it truly helps our stories and our grit get out to more people, the more followers and subscribers that we have. And the number one thing that we want people to know is that they're not alone, and that our stories, whether it's me talking to you solo or the guests that we interview, those are the stories that are going to leave the biggest impact and help us to leave an unerasable dent on this world. Until next time.
You've been listening to the Grit Crusade podcast with Brooke Plack. Our theme song is Thunder City by Lunar Ray, licensed through Soundstripe. This podcast was produced by Luminate Media Group. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.